I was not used to that type of discipline. Really struggled. Got in like 3 or 4 fights. Spent nights in prison, but it literally sucked my soul. I mean, if I had not had that training, what I'd had, it would have eaten me alive. He runs out the back door. I grabbed a veal bone. I threw it at him. I grabbed another veal bone. I went running down the back stairs and I chucked the veal bone through the back window of his van. Jesus. How cool would it be to end my career as one of the best chefs in the city?
Absolutely.
I just think that would be a really nice closing chapter of my career.
Welcome back to the Chef JKP Podcast. And on the show today, I have the absolute honor of having one of the most globally iconic chefs of our time, an incredible restaurateur, Jason Atherton. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So, straight off the bat,
Yeah.
can you tell me about your earliest ever childhood food memory?
I think really was predominantly when my mum and dad split up. My mum moved to Skegness and she remarried. She remarried a gentleman called David, who then became my stepfather. And they together they bought a guest house, what was sort of all the rage in the 60s and 70s, and seaside resorts in the United Kingdom, when people couldn't really afford to go abroad too much, you know, the middle, lower classes. And so Mum would make food, and one of the things she made was on a Friday night was prawn cocktail night.
Nice.
And after school, me and my sister would have to lay them out on all the tables. Only be like 20 people. And we used to steal like one prawn off every cocktail. And it was in Mary Rose sauce. They were expensive, right? I mean, they were only the frozen Greenland ones. But to us, like a prawn was exotic. And it was just that Mary Rose sauce. It was just delicious. And that's really sort of one of my first food memories, yeah.
So what sort of really got you then into cooking?
I think predominantly that. I mean, predominantly working with Mum in the guest house. You know, we'd have to lay the tables, we'd have to help serve. You know, I'd get home from school and she'd be making like, only out of packets and stuff, but like, things like jam roly-poly and all that type of stuff.
So it's kind of like you were involved in hospitality, as it were.
Absolutely,
from
yeah.
a super young age.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so, and I just, thought it was a really cool thing to do. And then I out of all, we got a choice at school, home economics or football as an extra lesson. All my mates took football, obviously, right? And I was the only one who took cooking. And I just liked it. It was, I got a lot of stick for it in the 70s and 80s, as you can imagine. But I loved it, right?
And so then the move from high school or to college, what was the choice that you did? You automatically went in sort of food technology, or did you have a choice to do something else?
No, I didn't, I joined the army. So at the age of 16, I decided that I wanted to be in the armed forces, and I thought I'd combine the two. So I joined the Army Catering Corps. I was sent to Aldershot to St Omer's barracks, and it was did my basic training, hated every minute of it. I was not used to that type of discipline. Really struggled. Got in like 3 or 4 fights. Spent nights in prison. I was a bag of trouble for them, I think. I just struggled because the way it worked was you had, you were 15, 16, and then the 20-year-olds, they were called like the Red Sergeants and Corporals, and they were in training to be the next generation of important soldiers, I suppose, if you want to call it corporal and sergeants. And then you had the real sergeants and corporals, and in charge of us was a gentleman called Sergeant Roach, and he had all the younger guys taking care of us, and it'd be the usual stuff, waking you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, tipping you out of bed, square bashing in the rain in your underpants.
Oh my God.
And it was, but listen, I'm not against it. I think today we're too soft, right?
Same as chefs, actually. We do the same, don't we?
It's discipline, and I had to learn the hard way. But I was and always was a bit of a fighter, and I would not take kindly to being tipped out of my bed at 2:00 in the morning.
Well, who would?
And then so it was fun times.
But during that time, did you manage to cook?
No, it was all basic training, learning to be a soldier basically.
Okay.
And then I went home after basic training, and then you had a choice. You could be signed out. So I begged my stepfather to sign me out. And then decided that I was going to be a chef. And then the sort of rest is history, really.
Okay. So which was the first sort of serious foray into culinary world?
Well, I took a job in Skegness at a hotel called the County Hotel, which was considered to be the best hotel in Skegness, in Lincolnshire at the time. But you look back at the food now, it was what it was, right? But nevertheless, Mr. Drummond, who was very disciplined general manager, ran the hotel, and he ran a beautiful hotel. And one day, I'll never forget that day. And there's days in your life what you just never forget. It was a Wednesday, and it was autumn. It was chucking down with rain, and he came in the kitchen. And I don't know why he did this, but he said, "Look, the menu's boring. I'm really not happy with the menu." We were all stood in the kitchen, and he was giving us all a lecture. And he said, "I want every single one of you to go away, and I want you to come back in a week's time and cook me a dish." And I thought, how do I even go about creating a dish? Right? I have no idea. So I went to W.H. Smith's on Lumley Road in Skegness, and there was loads of cookbooks, but there was this one cookbook by Gourmet, and it was called Dining in France. I still have the book today. It's the very first cookbook I ever bought. I had no idea who Gourmet was. I just saw this fancy fish dish on the front by Twago, and I was like, okay, I'm going to buy that cookbook. It cost me an absolute fortune. I bought it, took it home, and I chose this recipe in it by Jean-Paul Lambert, and it was almost like a steak chasseur type dish, and bought the ingredients, practiced it at home, went to work, and cooked it, and he ate it. Mr. Drummond ate everybody's, and I was like right at the bottom of the pile, and he said to me, "One day you're going to be one of those famous chefs that work in London." I thought it was mental.
Wow.
I thought it was absolute nutcase. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I said, "Lena, do you like the dish?" She's like, "I love the dish. I want it on the menu. I want you to start showing me what more you can do." And, I started cooking out this cookbook. The sous chef who wanted the head chef's role because she was moving on was super not happy.
Right.
So he made my life more difficult. And, I stayed for like 6 months. I didn't stay very long because I wanted to be in London. I got addicted to that feeling of someone telling me my food was really good, It's a very addictive feeling when you cook something really nice. And I just packed my bags and went to London. That was it.
So what I'm particularly interested in is because you've worked for some of the most incredible chefs. Marco Pierre White, Ferran Adria, Nico Ladenis, God bless his soul. And then, of course, you're exec chef for Gordon. I wanted to know, from your point of view, how was the pressure at that time cooking for those sorts of chefs? Because it must not have been easy.
No, of course, especially back then. You're talking late 80s, early 90s, when cooking in Great Britain was like cooking in the SAS, right? It was not for the faint-hearted, and it was damn tough. There's no two ways about it. But would I change it for the world? No chance. It gives you resilience. It gives you, it makes you realise how far the human body can be pushed before it breaks. The amount of hours we worked. We were. The chefs at Harvard, we were rock solid. You could have dropped us in the desert in the middle of nowhere, and we'd have figured it out. It was really a special time, I think. I'm not saying I agree with everything what went on, because there was a lot of stuff what maybe shouldn't have happened, but there's always a yin and a yang to everything, right?
Of course. But I think the reason why I'm asking, which is going back to your army days, obviously you had that set of sort of morals in the army, and it must have set you up to work in those kind of SAS kitchens because, it is a hierarchy. It's extremely tough, but only certain people can handle that type of pressure, especially in a place like London, and then, as you said, working in a place like Harvey's. It must have been difficult. But how was the kitchen ran in Spain, in El Bulli, compared to somewhere like Harvey's?
Different. It was different, you know, and it was almost nearly 10 years on. Ferran's kitchen was a complete creative hub. You know, it was different. I mean, listen, Ferran, you didn't mess around with Ferran. If Ferran lost it, you know, you better put your helmet on. But it was more about. It was more organised. It was just different. You know, I mean, Harvey's was very organised, but it was just a different. Everything evolved around one man and everything what he had to say, right? Whereas Ferran was interested in, you know, it's like, Jason, you've worked for all these great British chefs. If you had that ingredient, what would you do with it, right? And he would allow you to do that. Whereas like Marco, Nico, Kaufman, it was like, you cook it that way. And there's no, I don't care where you've worked, what you've learned. I'm not interested. I don't have time for it. That's the way you do it. And if you don't do it, there's consequences.
Yeah.
Do you mean?
Yeah.
So it was a completely different methodology of a workplace, and I think they both have their place, right?
Of course.
I'm very much of the latter, so I'm very much of the after experiencing Ferran, you know, I'm a lot calmer as a chef. I'm a lot more emotionally disciplined, but I think that comes with maturity too. And it's just different. It was different times, you know.
So again, just coming back to, because I certainly face it here in Dubai, and I'm sure you and your and the head chefs have spoken about this. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when chefs were coming up, the discipline was hard. But it taught you, as you said, to be resilient and that sort of thing. Whereas now, we struggle with it as the executive chefs and head chefs. What do you think can be done to attract more talent generally within the industry?
I think we're doing it already. I mean, it's better hours, it's better pay. But look, you know, what everyone's got to understand is customers will only pay a certain amount of money for food, right, and beverage, but till it comes out of their reach. Now, we're at a point where we're at a breaking point as an industry globally, not just Britain or here. Whereas a customer will pay that, right, and it's a mathematics. It's running a restaurant's mathematics. You pay your rent, you pay your rates. Landlords want more, right? Government wants to put your rates up. The cooks want more. The waiters want more. The sommelier tells you he's worth this because he's passed his WSET free. Your head chef's been with you 5 years, deserves a pay rise, but you can't afford it. And you know you're still eating out in Michelin-star restaurants in London for lunch for 50 quid. You know it's insanity, right? And still customers say it's so expensive. And you think it's just, at some point, it's going to break, right? Because that's just how things happen. And I think that, you know, the future certainly is fine dining restaurants will become smaller because you can't be able to do 50, 60 for lunch and 50, 60 for dinner anymore. It takes too much staff, too much effort, too much training. You need too much space, you know? And I think it's, you know, we're going through an evolution of what fine dining becomes as to where, you know, you have to do now. If you have a busy restaurant now, you've got to do 200-300 covers to make the maths work. Yeah. Right. To be able to sell it a little bit cheaper. You know, there's restaurants in London. A perfect example, Fallow. I love it. Great restaurant. William Moy does a great job, and you know they're doing like 500-600 covers a day, serving great food, and you know it's packed out. Customers, they're looking for that. You know.
So, then moving on to Dubai. Because I can't ignore the relationship with Gordon, first of all. You came here first, you ran Ver, which was an incredible restaurant. It won all of the accolades, excuse me. And then after that, Maze happened. Now, the reason why I want to talk to you about Maze is because when you were there, I was a CDP at Claridge's. When Maze came about, there was such a huge buzz in London about yourself, about the restaurant. Can you tell us about that concept and what made it so special?
I don't know, really. I mean, the thing is, sometimes you just hit on something. It's the right time, the right moment. It's what the customers are looking for. And I've never been one to like sort of bask in glory or anything. You know, I just go to work every day, work extremely hard, push myself. Even today, you know, I'm 52. I don't, you know, you read stuff, what people write about you, and I'm just sort of think, I almost separate it out as a separate person. I don't look at that person and go, I'm this sort of like stuff where everyone writes about me. I'm sort of like, I'm just the same old Jason what left school at 15, right? But Maze was, I mean, it had no right to have the accolades it had, really, when we look at the size of it. I mean, it was
big.
It was a 120-seat restaurant. We were 43rd in the world. It was, Michelin-star. I spoke to Michelin not long after I left, and they said we were very close to giving it a 2nd star.
Oh, wow.
It was 4 rosettes. It was 8 out of 10 The Good Food Guide. It was packed. I mean, I think it peaked at like 14 million a year turnover.
Jesus.
And, but it literally sucked to my soul. I mean, if I had not had that training, what I'd had, it would have eaten me alive. But I was just hell bent. My poor suffering wife, I was 7 days a week, 18, 19-hour days. It was I remember I was such a perfectionist. I remember my meat guy, it was part of meat, so I'll never forget it. And I was a bit of a psycho back then, I've got to be honest. And I was a product of my environment, if I'm honest, right? And I've learned to control it since. But he delivered. I had Pyrenees and lamb on the menu, and he delivered the Pyrenees and lamb, and he'd put the veal bones on top of the lamb, and all the lamb was squashed at the bottom. And so I had a heated discussion with the delivery driver, and the delivery driver was a bit of a wide boy. So then this heated, me just living on like black coffee and black coffee.
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, exactly that. So I was sort of like, I went from 1 to 1,000 miles an hour in a second. And then he starts screaming at me. I start screaming at him. I then go for him. He runs out the back door. I grabbed the veal bone. I threw it at him. I grabbed another veal bone. I went running down the back stairs and I chucked the veal bone through the back window of his van. Jesus. And I was like, yeah, I think I need to take a day off. I think I need to chill a little bit. But I was just, couldn't accept the fact that people didn't respect the ingredients like I respected it. Do you know?
Because I walked into Maze, and so a couple of boys from Gordon Ramsay at Claridge's transferred to move over to you. So we had a chat a few times, and the kitchen was I remember it was a line.
That's it.
And then you had the chef's table, and so you could see what was going on, but they were like, the pressure was full on, but they loved it because it was that buzz, and it was just, everything was so fast. The sauce section, the fish, the meat, everything was like bam, bam, bang. And so it was really quite a special thing. But I have to give you a personal thank you, because in 2009, I did a BBC television program with Raymond Blanc.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it was called Out of the Frying Pan. And essentially, the show was about me doing outside catering, but they put us in some really difficult situations. This particular challenge, I had to do 75 covers, 6 courses in under 90 minutes. So it was really hardcore, and it was on a super yacht.
Wow.
So they were going through the brief, and the BBC, it was very much an apprentice sort of setup. And they said, we're gonna make you cook for someone, but we're not going to tell you who it is. So I was in the car, and then they pulled up outside of Maze, and all the cameras were set up, lights, and they were like, you're cooking for Jason Atherton. And I was like, oh my God, because I was, it was really, Michelin, huge name. I had a lot of pressure, and I wanted to impress you. So I cooked in your private kitchen, and you came in and you gave me some really incredible tips on how to cook different types of meat. Don't do too much on the plate. And actually, I went away. We did the challenge, and we did it in under 90 minutes. I have to say thank you very much for that.
Well, I remember that, actually.
It was really... I was flipping heck. But it was amazing to be there. So then, after Gordon and all of that time, why did you decide to move on and open your own place?
I mean, it's a tough decision because, I was getting paid. Gordon paid me extremely well. I was earning £250,000 a year being the chef patron of Maze globally.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of money. I don't pay myself that. I don't even pay my own salary that today. And we bought a nice little home in Balham. We had the one kid at the time, Kazir, in private school. So life was good, I was sponsored by BMW. I had a nice car. There was no reason for me to be, but the thing is, when you cook at an elite level and you continually strive to be better, the drive today is the exact same as what it was then, right? But you know, I'm just a little bit calmer how I channel it. But the drive is exactly the same, right? And I just knew. I just remember being on the pass one night. It was a Saturday night, and we were rammed. And I'm just going over it in my head. It's almost like I wasn't there. It was almost like my body was doing all the work, and I was just going through my head. And I was like, I'm opening my own restaurant.
Wow.
I'm gonna open my own restaurant.
So that was during service.
During service, I was just going through the clogs in my head, and even Jimmy, my head chef at the time, he's like, chef, you like zoned out tonight. You all right? I was like, yeah, I'm fine, Jimmy. I'm just like, I'm just mulling things over in my head. And my wife was at home, Ira was at home, watching TV, and I come in, and she's like, hey, babe, how was service? I said, yeah, it was great. I said, we're going to do our own restaurant. And she goes, how are we going to do that? I said, we're going to remortgage the house, we're going to find a partner, or we'll raise money somehow. And I said, we're going to do it. And she goes, where are we going to do it? I said, Mayfair. She goes, we can't afford to open a restaurant in Mayfair. I said, look, we're going to do it. Don't worry about it, we're going to do it. And she goes, look, okay, fine. And she's always trusted me, she's always been very trustworthy of stuff like that. And that was it. We just, we spent the next 6 months figuring it out. And, and then we did exactly that. We remortgaged the house. I had about 400 grand worth of savings. I sold a flat, what I'd bought, raised a couple $100 doing that, had some savings of my own, our savings. And then, we put all the money together, and then we set up a company. We got an investor. We sold 25% of that to our investor. And then we had enough money to build the restaurant. And then Pollen Street was born. That was it.
Because I think the other thing is that when it first opened, the other thing, not just about the food, but you also had one of the very first dessert bars. And where the dessert chefs essentially were in the front. And it was almost like omakase sort of style.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were doing all of that, and again, the buzz was really big. But was there ever a time just before the opening where you thought, like, am I doing the right thing? Because it must be quite daunting, especially in a place like London, where the competition is rife.
Yeah, I mean, there is a point where the thing is you have to back yourself. Like, you have to be supremely confident in your abilities. Because if you waver for a single second, everybody from the bloggers, the critic, everybody's an expert today, right? Everybody. So and I was no exception. We had all the hype going on. We had all the bloggers coming in.
Everyone was there. I remember.
Some people loved it. Some people didn't, right? Because I'm a big name, so people use that as a way to write
cannon fodder, basically,
right? To write something what then goes out there, and they go, oh my god, this person must really know their stuff if they can criticize Jason Atherton, right? So you have to accept that. But listen, I can learn from a little old lady coming in and not liking what I do, so I don't take any of that. I read it, I listen to it, and I take from it what I need, and then I move on. I don't dwell on it, because the thing is, you can't please everybody, right? Not everybody's going to love what you do. The most important thing is that the majority of people love what you do, and they fill the restaurant. And I've been very lucky in my life that that's always been the case for me. But when Michael West was my GM at the time, and this place cost me £4 million to build.
Right.
And the thing is, if this didn't work, I was done. It was over for me, right? I was kids out of private school, my house on the market, and out looking for a head chef's job, right? And I burnt my bridges with Gordon, because Gordon, I was one of Gordon's golden boys, so he loved me, and he and he was very upset when I left. We're all good now, but he was very upset when I left, and I understand that, because I get upset when my main guys leave, right? So I understand where he was coming from, but I had to see if I could do it on my own. It was just a burning desire. But the only time I questioned it was because I was just too busy, And month before we opened, I said to Michael, okay, on Wednesday, the 28th of April, because we opened up the 28th of May, we need to turn on the bookings, 9 a.m. And it was 2011. And I was like, we got in early that morning, about 7 o'clock, 2 reservation girls, me and Michael, the IT guy, to make sure all the phones were working and stuff. And I said to Michael, what's no one calls? And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, Michael. And I literally had a little bit of a moment. I was like, what if the phones don't ring? Mate, don't tell anybody. So I've got enough money in the bank for 1 month. That's it. 1 month. I don't have 6 months like you're supposed to have. I've got 1 month because we've overspent. I said, if we don't hit the ground running, I'm proper screwed.
Whoa.
And he's like, don't worry about it. They'll come. Everyone loved what we did at Maze. They'll come. And I was like, oh my God.
It's a lot of pressure.
Oh my God. I just said a little prayer, do you know? And then 1 minute to 9, we turned the phones on. And like 10 seconds went by. And I tell you what, one of the most magical things happened. It just went ballistic. And within the space of like a couple of hours, we had a backlog of emails. We had to shut it all down because we couldn't cope. And we had 6 months worth of bookings.
Oh my God.
And we had to call everyone back and apologise. It was only supposed to be 3 months. So we were full for 6 months.
Incredible.
Lunch and dinner, 6 days a week. Do you know how many people that is?
Flipping heck.
That was insane. It took the girls about 2 weeks to untangle it all.
Jesus Christ. So
It was unbelievable.
and also I'm just
Very
I'm
flattering.
just remembering how were you turning tables
Yeah.
at that point?
120 lunch, 170 dinner.
Jesus, man. So that must have been amazing for you. You must have just been like, what a weight lifted off your shoulders.
But then comes that great responsibility
Yeah.
because all these people are coming because of the hype, right?
Right.
So we got to deliver, right?
Which you did.
Yeah.
Which you absolutely did.
And then after 4 months, we got the star, which was amazing. I didn't think we'd get a star that quick because we were doing big numbers, but it was a continuation. I mean, we still wasn't doing as big numbers as Maze. Maze was 250 a night, 150 lunch. So we calmed and then eventually I took it down to a more, because the brigade were dropping like flies. Me and the main boys were good.
Is that because it was,
just
too
busy.
intensive?
It was just busy,
Right.
right? And for me, I'm like, come on, let's do more.
Yeah.
The young boys are like, oh my God.
And they should be machines,
Yeah.
right? Pushing on. But then, so after that success of Pollen Street, and it's still very much a beautiful brand, an incredible restaurant, a massive part of the, not London UK scene, but the UK dining scene, I would say. Now you have, I believe, over 20 concepts worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's no mean feat. Mykonos, Shanghai, St. Moritz, Cebu, Dubai, of course. How do you now, because you must take a little bit of a step back from the kitchen and as a chef and obviously see it more as a restaurateur. How do you manage all of these spaces nowadays?
Well, we've had to break it down a little bit. So, if I could go back, if I could go back 10 years and tell my younger self something, would be to be a little bit more organised how I expanded the company, rather than just inventing concepts every time I got asked to go somewhere. So now what we've done since COVID is unpick it a little bit.
Right.
So the company's now built up of Row, which is Refinement of Work, which is our fine dining concept, which we've just launched here in Dubai, and we're building one on Savile Row in London.
Oh wow!
So they'll be the only two mega fine dining restaurants in the group, where it's tasting menu only. Spencer Mertzger, the head chef of the Ritz, is on board with us, so he'll be running the one in London.
Nice.
Dan Burke will run the one here, and then me and Spencer will fly backwards and forwards here to change the menus here with Dan. So that's the fine dining. And if we want to do that with someone else, say if we want to do one in Tokyo, it's a set format, right? They're the plates, that's the glassware, that's the wine list, that's the waiter uniforms, that's how it works, right? And you either pay for it or you don't, right? Where in the past, what's happened with is someone's come and said, can we do this? But I've only got a budget of that. I've got, okay, we can make it work. Right? Whereas now we don't need to do anything, right? We've got a good business. Then we have City Social, which is our sort of like, our one in London's got 1 Michelin-star. We've got obviously the one here in Dubai, the Grosvenor House, which is going great guns. It's amazing. We've got the one in London, and then we're looking at doing one in Riyadh next. And that is really, they've got to be at the top of a building, like the one in London and Dubai. They've got to have views, and it's sort of like casual fine dining with a bar, cool music, relaxed service. And, they do the numbers like 150, 200 for dinner,
Right.
and like 100 for lunch. And then the next one down after that is Casse Cou, which is our sort of like French shishi type restaurant. It's a hark back to the golden era of French cooking, big menu, Paul Walsh is the chef de cuisine for that concept. And again, one in Mayfair, and we're looking to do more of those in other places. We're looking to do one in Soho, and then we'll see how that concept gets on. And then after that, there's the Tavern, which we do, Berners Tavern. We've just signed to do one in Chelsea on Pavilion Road. So that's Chelsea Tavern, and that is all-day dining. So like, breakfast, lunch, brunch, dinner, very much like the Wolseley, but on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And, and outside of that, that's it, right? So if you come to me and go, okay, I want to, I don't know, Bird by social, I'm like, I just don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
This is what I do. And I make it quite clear that I run Row as a chef, and all the rest I run as restaurateur. Yes, I invent the menu. Yes, I change the dishes, but you don't see me in the kitchen running the service. I only run the service at Row. And that's pretty much it, really.
Because you must get approached rather a lot, from different countries, and people coming to you and saying, look, we've got a concept that we think you can consult or work on here, and so on and so forth. So it must be quite nice for yourself to be able to take a step back, control and understand which markets you want to go to and where it must lead.
Yeah.
Because now you had Marina Social before here in Dubai, which was, again, beautiful space, incredible kitchen, the skull plates, I remember, the open kitchen. It was really fantastic. Now you've got 4 concepts in Grosvenor House.
Yep.
But what I'm really particularly interested in is Row 145, because this concept looks phenomenal. Can you run me through the whole thing, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's the dream. I put a short video up on my Insta the other day, just talking about, very few chefs get to open up their dream restaurant, right? And, and when I mean dream, I mean like, where every single element has come out of my mind as the perfect scenario. So the kitchen, number one, is just absolute a dream to cook in. The plates, the crockery, the cutlery, the wine list, the way you enter the building. You get up in your private lift, you come out, you've got 360 views of Dubai. One where you drink your champagne, have the first courses, you've got a view of the Palm. You then, once you've had those 3 courses, we pick you up, we take you to another part of the building, and you have 10 courses, and then as you have those 10 courses, only 7 tables. I mean, it's just the dream.
And that's
right?
for the entire service?
Entire service, just 7 tables.
So you're not essentially shifted like other restaurants are. Once you finish, you're out kind of thing. Once you're in, you're in.
You're in. That's
okay.
it. And then once you've done those 10 courses, we move you to a secret room behind the wine cellar called the Chef's Library, where you'll have another 4 courses. And then, and then you can just sit there, have cognacs, coffee, tea, whatever,
Wow.
and look at the Burj side and the harbour and just relax, and it's great playlist. It's all my favourite music from the 80s and 70s. And it's just, when I was growing up as a chef, and it's like, it's unapologetically, unashamedly 17 course indulgence, best ingredients on the planet. And, it's just, I love it.
When did you come up with this concept?
Well, I've always wanted to do it, but the problem is it's when was the right time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And as the company's become stable, it's like, we came out of the pandemic really well. It was like, what, I'm 50, I was 51, 50 when I started talking to the Grosvenor and Pam, and we had this dream of creating something really special for Dubai, and it was like, let's do it. I've probably got 10, 12 years cooking at an elite level. Let's just get it done, and we decided to do one in London and one in Dubai, and that will be the only places they exist, and that's it. That's it. That's what it is. And I'll split my time between Dubai and London, and making sure our guests are having a world-class experience.
Because I think what's got interesting, Jason, is that you could have had the pick of any city in the world to do this concept.
Mm-mm.
You could have had Paris, Tokyo, of course, New York, all these really incredible cities, but you decided in Dubai instead of London first, which I find quite interesting. Why did you pick Dubai first?
Because, when I came here in the year 2000, and we opened up there by Gordon Ramsay. We were the first fine dining restaurant by a free Michelin-star chef to ever hit the Middle East.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember with Andy Haley came out here for a holiday and reviewed Fare by Gordon Ramsay, gave it 18 out of 20 and said it was, you know, already operating at 3-star level, which was incredible, right? And it was tough back then to get ingredients. It was really hard, so I had to be super organised, you know. I got 2 deliveries a week from France and Germany, and it was super difficult. So I had to really plan the menu very carefully. But we did it, and I met my wife here, I got married here. It was the first time I had a social life. You know, I learned to play golf, I got a lot of golfing buddies, and you know, I just had this love affair with Dubai. I really loved it. A lot of people didn't like it, and I loved it. I just fell in love with the city, and I've got massive memories here. And I just felt like there was unfinished business in the city. And if I started my career as one of the best chefs in the city, how cool would it be to end my career as one of the best chefs in the city?
Absolutely.
I just think that would be a really nice closing chapter of my career. If we could, you know, God forbid, it become one of the best restaurants in the region, then, you know, it would be amazing.
Which undoubtedly I believe it will be, because what you're describing to me now, and I'm just sort of thinking, I cannot see, there's only maybe 1 or 2 other restaurants who have a 17-course tasting menu, but the way that you're describing of moving around, that does not happen here. So, for example, if you go to Le Manoir, they do that.
Yeah.
You sit, you have your canapes, and so on and so forth, then you go to the main dining room, you have your 12-course tasting menu, and then you finish with your canapes or petit four, somewhere else. But what you're describing also is that it's not just about, for me, it's not just about the food that you're describing, it's also about the entire experience.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because that sounds like a 3-star Michelin experience where, again, I don't know any restaurant currently here or in the region that has their own wine cellar where you can come in, have a chat with the sommelier.
Exactly.
All of that sort of thing. So those touches of elegance are real key. You know, so to have that is incredible, and I'm sure it's going to be up there globally. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar, Jason, with the podcast, but now we've come to the quick fire round. So this is all about your memories coming in and really catching up on that. Now, the first question that I always ask all the guests and chefs for the quick fire. Now, you don't need to name names, but cast your mind back to either the funniest kitchen or restaurant story that either happened to you during service or that you've witnessed, apart from lobbing bones through the van.
Probably one of the funniest probably was when I was the fish cook at restaurant Marco Pierre White when we moved, and I'd messed one of the dishes up, so I got sent downstairs to clean the kitchen, and Michael Lambie took over the fish section. Back then there was only one ingredient Marco bought in, everything else was homemade, and it was these truffles he liked from Paris, and I can't remember who made them, but they used to come in. Thierry, the pastry chef, used to bring them in from Paris.
So chocolate truffles?
Yeah, chocolate truffles.
Right.
And they were in the fridge downstairs, the pastry fridge. And I was like 6 stone wet through, right? We barely ate. We were 6 days a week, 18-hour days. And I was starving, so I went downstairs. And I'm cleaning all the walls, soapy water. And I've got my pocket stuffed with chocolate truffles, so I could eat them while I'm cleaning the wall. And I've got cocoa powder all around my lips. And then there was a famous restaurateur family called the McCoys.
Right.
They had a restaurant in Staddlebridge in North Yorkshire called McCoys. Had 1 Michelin-star, and Marco was very fond of them. 2 very eccentric guys. One was a chef, one in the front of the house. And I knew they were in for dinner, and Marco was obviously showing them around his brand new Pride and Joy, right, where we were pushing for 3 stars. And I heard him behind me, and I was like, oh my God. I literally went white, my knees went to jelly. I'm cleaning, I'm like, please. And he's like, this is Jason. He's our fish cook. but can't cook fish. I mean, he was a little bit more expensive than that.
Sure.
And I would clean up. If he asked me to turn around and say hello, I'm done. I'm busted, right? And I got all cocoa powder around my mouth. Anyway, he just swapped around the corner. I was like, oh my goodness, oh my days. Why me? Why me? And he called me another time. This is even funnier, I think. He had a dog called Harvey.
Right.
And he used to bring it to work, and then he used to run around everywhere. And then Matty used to come home and take the dog home afterwards. And it was red hot summer's day, and he asked me and Howell Jones, used to call us the Nico twins, to take the dog for a walk. So we're only trying to set a section up for service.
You also had to do that?
We had to take a dog for a walk. Yeah, Marco was pretty out there. So then we go take the dog for a walk, and I said to Howell, I'm like to Howell, you know what, Howell, this is nuts. I said, just lay it off the lead, and let's go and buy an ice cream, and then we'll let the dog run. And then, so me and Howell are sat on the park bench licking ice cream, and this dog's going mental, running everywhere. And then we lost the dog, right? Because we couldn't spit ice cream. And then all of a sudden, I heard him behind me going, I won't tell you what he shouted, but he was like, oi, you two, with a few other words in it. Oi, you two. And I was like, I chucked my ice cream down like that on the floor. And I jumped up, I'm like, Harvey, come here, boy. We got away with it. I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, oh dear.
Wow. Marco, what a legend. But yeah, I mean,
legend, yeah. Proper legend.
Who would you say are your top 3 culinary heroes?
In Britain, definitely Marco, for sure. Definitely Marco Pierre White. Gordon for what he taught me. You know? Gordon, 12 years with Gordon was just insane. And then outside, probably Thomas Keller. He's the chef I regret not working for the most. I wish I'd gone to the French Laundry when I was younger. His discipline is just second to none. You know, I love his discipline in the kitchen. You know, I just ate there recently and it was magnificent. I'm a total fanboy.
Wow. Okay. Then, through your formative years or now, what would you say has been the meal? I call this the meal of a lifetime. The meal that changed your life.
There's been 3 actually. Honestly, there's been many, but they've been there for very different reasons. You know, I remember as a young cook, when I left Marco got me a job at a restaurant called Le Bourge de Lille in Alsace for Marc Abelin. And I had a rucksack. I had enough money to get the flight to Strasbourg. And then from Strasbourg, I got the train to Riberville. But I had about 5 hours spare. And I went to a restaurant called Au Crocodile. And it was a free Michelin-star restaurant in Strasbourg called Emile Jean. And I had enough money for the lunch menu, no alcohol, you know, just enough. So I go in, and I look a bit strange, like scruffy little chef, you know, with my rucksack. And a big rucksack, so I've got all my clothes and everything in it, right? And so I sit down, and the waiter comes along, speaks good English, and he's like, oh, you know, are you in the industry? I said, yeah, I'm a chef. I've got a job at Au Bois de Lille. I'm just passing through. Okay, great. You know, where did you work in London? I said, I work for Marco Pierre White. Now, Emile Jean didn't speak much English, but he later worked out he was learning to speak English through an English class, but he was obsessed by White Heat, the book. You know? And so I ordered the lunch menu, but then all of a sudden, all this food started to arrive, and I'd never experienced anything like this before. The generosity of hospitality, right? All this food arrived with matching wines. I'm like, oh my God, I can't afford this. I thought, what is this stuff? I've got enough. I ordered the lunch menu, and I'm literally petrified.
Right.
I didn't enjoy a single mouthful because I was so scared. I was like, I'm going to get arrested. And I'm like, no one said anything to me, right? Because they're just... And then at the end, Emile Jean came out and he was like, hope you enjoyed lunch, you know. And then the manager's like translating. And then they didn't charge me. Do you know, I'd never. And he was like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I've just never experienced anything like that before.
Wow.
You know, it was amazing. And eating at 3-star level in France, it's the first time I'd eaten at 3-star level in France.
That must have been life-changing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Not just the meal, but also to have that hospitality and that warm generosity.
Yeah. You know, I'd never experienced anything like it before. You know? And I was like, just mesmerised. It was amazing. But I think as far as recent times, I'm a massive fan of Cesar Ramirez. You know, I make it quite clear to people. I think he's probably the greatest living chef at the moment, I think, alongside Bjorn Francine maybe. And I just come back from America on my summer holiday and had a fantastic meal at Benu. I've been wanting to eat there for a long time. It was outstanding, you know. And so they're my three favourite restaurants at the moment: Chef's Table, Brooklyn Fare, Francine, and Benu.
Wow. So then, the hardest question, one of the hardest questions, is what advice would you give to 16-year-old Jason Atherton?
Be patient. Your time's coming. Don't stress so much. Be a little bit, I wish I could go back and just be a little bit more organised the way I built my company. I think I said that before. And, you know, just be kind. You know? Just be kind to people, you know. No matter, even when you don't want to be, just be kind to people, right? Because life's tough enough, you know. Everybody's got their own reasons why they behave like they behave, right? Yeah. And, you know, you can always control the way you react, but you can't control how other people react, right? So just always be kind, you know?
And the final question, Jason, is, as you know yourself, there are hundreds of thousands of talented chefs in the world, but what would you say to chefs who really have the dream, the passion, and the drive to go it alone and open their own restaurant?
It's just, look, at the end of the day, I genuinely believe that you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to sacrifice, right? It's a very important word, sacrifice, because wanting something is one thing, right? Having the discipline and the sacrifice to go after that and face adversity, because look, you will fail. You're always going to fail, right? You're going to fail at something. You're going to fail, you know, you're going to work in a restaurant, what you really want to work in, and it doesn't work out for you. And, you know, can you pick yourself up, walk into another kitchen, what suits you better, and shine and rise? You know, I've closed restaurants. I'm not afraid to say it. You know, I've had some massive failures. Shisharu, Charles Coran said it was one of the, if he could die in a restaurant, Shisharu would be it. He gave it 10 out of 10, loved it, and it failed miserably. I lost £3.2 million in that restaurant. Whoa. Right? Do I sit there crying about it? No. Did it hurt? Yeah, of course it hurt. But the bottom line is, it's like you have to accept failure, right? You've got to learn from it, and you've got to understand that not everything's going to go your way. But what you've got to do is have the discipline and the mindset, right? To look at me. I don't need to open up a 17 course. I've got nothing left to prove to anybody, right? But it's not about that. I'm not here to prove that I'm the best chef in Dubai. I'm not here to prove that. I'm here to do it for myself, right? I'm here to do it for myself, to cook food what I genuinely love to eat myself, because I know how much joy it gives me and my wife, and I want to share that feeling with my customers. Do you know what I mean?
Incredible.
Right? And I know if we do that, it will achieve all the other stuff anyway. Because if you want to be famous, don't become a cook. It's too hard. The hours are too long. The sacrifice is too much, right? Go and learn to sing, right? You know, go on X Factor. You know, go and, you know, I don't know, go and do something what's much easier to be famous at. Because becoming famous is a completely different thing to becoming a great chef, right? Because once you become a great chef, yeah, right, fame comes with it. But also, what is fame? Fame's fleeting, right? Do you mean? You know,
it's very fickle, isn't it?
You know,
very
like
fickle.
No one, if you said to young cooks today, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful to the elder generation, but who's Pierre Kaufman, who's Nick, they wouldn't have a clue.
No.
Right? But they do know Bjorn Francine, they do know me, and I know in a generation, people are going to go, Jason Atherton, never heard of him. Do you mean? So it's not about that. It's about what you get from it now right? I know that the food we're cooking at Roe, I believe it will give the customers the same experience what I felt when I was eating at Brooklyn Fare, Francine, Bennu, because that's what I believe, right? And I have to believe that, and I've got to drive that discipline, and I've got to be at work every single day, tweaking, pushing it, driving it, perfecting it, right? And making sure that everything's how it should be to give that customer that experience. And if we do that, then it will be successful, you know?
Incredible advice. Well, Jason, all that's left for me to say is, look, we have gone through so many incredible topics, from your history, working with the greats, your relationship with Dubai, Pollen Street, the global empire that you have. On behalf of all of the young chefs and chefs who are executives who always looked up to you, I want to say thank you on their behalf, who were never able to say thank you, because you really have inspired us to always do better, to always be humble and to always progress. So really, and on behalf of myself, thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the podcast, because it really means a lot. And all of the advice that you have is going to go out to a global audience who will really take so much from it. So thank you so much.
Very kind. Appreciate you having me.